All right, how's it going, everyone? Got something a little different on the channel this time. This is not a lawnmower, this is not a truck. This is a side-by-side four-wheel drive CF Moto UTV. I think that's what they call these. But this is actually not mine. This is a buddy of mine's, and I'm fixing it for him. He picked it up as kind of an investment or maybe just a toy to keep. We'll see. He actually was hoping the noise that it was making may not have been internal motor noise. He figured it probably was, but sometimes you get lucky and it ends up being something simple. I have since removed the motor. So this is what we're looking at right now. Just a big empty space where the motor goes. Again, this is a four-wheel drive CF 800 US-A. Hopefully it ends up not being too bad. I'm pretty sure the engine's going to need a complete rebuild. Actually, I know it's going to need a complete rebuild because we drained the oil and we got a bunch of copper-colored flakes and debris inside the oil, kind of like coated the whole bottom of the pan with copper or brass colored, I guess it would be copper colored debris, which indicates that the bearings have worn out, and it was knocking from that. But there is no external damage on the block, so hopefully we're able to take it apart and replace the innards. I believe the rebuild kits in these come with like a full sleeve that's part of the head, which is good. So you get new pistons, new connecting rods, new crankshaft, new cylinder walls, and everything. So, so far all I did is I pulled it out of the unit. I took, like I said, that side cover off, and those bolts are right here, along with the spark plugs, right there. And I did remove the starter. The starter motor was right here with these two bolts here, or screws. No, they're bolts that were holding that on, so I got that out of the way. So we're going to start on this side and start ripping it apart, and let's work our way in. Just going to line up our pieces. I want to get this on video and document how I'm taking it apart in case I have any questions when it's time to put it back together. So I'll just set you up in a couple of different angles, and let's see what we got here. All right, it's going to be kind of hard to video exactly what I'm doing here is get a nice clean view with the camera, so I'm going to do the best I can. All right, this appears to be like a crank sensor. Yep. It's pretty much like a ABS wheel speed sensor or a crank sensor. Very similar. Alright, looks like there's a seal inside this cover right here that you could take these 3 screws off to get to. I'm going to leave it be for now. I don't make sure that my rebuild kit comes with that new seal. Next we're going to take this, this is the water pump right here, we'll take that off. With housings like this, especially if the screws are different lengths, I like to keep the screws right inside each of the holes that they came out of, just so you don't get confused when you put it back together which one's which. It's kind of a little time saver. In this, I think they're all the same length anyway, so it wouldn't matter, but... Alright, so there's the water pump impeller. Appears to be in good shape. This was the oil filter housing. I already pulled the oil filter out and tore it apart, and that's where I found all the particles. I think I took a picture of the particles. I'll go ahead and stick those up here in the video so you can see how bad it was. But the oil filter goes in here. I'll actually see if I can find any left in here. Yeah, you certainly can. You see in the light there? See, like there's a big chunk right there. This is all, hopefully that shows up on camera. You can see all the little bits of copper, which indicates that the bearing's worn out. It's a good tip if you're ever wondering if you've got a motor noise and you're wondering if it's something connected to the motor, like a alternator or a water pump, or sometimes you can get like an idler pulley. You can get all kinds of different noises. Like I said, the flex plate, you know, flywheel between the motor and transmission can crack and cause a noise that's similar to a engine rod knock. But the true way to tell is go ahead and drain the oil and take a look at its condition. I mean, it's a good way to determine whether it's definitely bad, you know, because you could go look at something that somebody just put fresh oil in and you might not see that in it or whatever. But the point is if you drain it and you see specks in it, you know that there's definitely some extra internal wear, and you're going to have to pull the motor apart and do some engine work on that. All right, I'm going to check and see if all these bolts are the same length. If they are, I'm just going to take them all out. So far they are. Just because I don't want to end up having them fall and then not know. So far they're all the same. Okay, that one's longer. So I'm going to leave the longer one in there because that's the specific place where it goes. All these other ones, same length. Oh, nope, that one's longer. That's it. So 2 longer ones. So we'll make note on that. This one right down here next to the oil, and then this one in the upper corner are the 2 long ones. I'm going to pull them out for right now. I'm just going to stick them back in those places when I put this together, but they're slightly longer. I'll show you the difference. Appears to be about 5 millimeters longer. So stick those back in once we get this cover off. Now a lot of times you'll see like a tab. See this like little flat tab right here? There'll probably be another one right here. It kind of gives you a good angle to go ahead and take a rubber mallet and lightly tap, or a pry bar, to try to separate cases like this, to get them apart. I usually start with a metal hammer with just a nice slight tap, just to see what it's going to take to get these apart. Now I don't think I have to pull these 2 out. These were just holding a bracket that held the oil line that goes to here. And I think the water pump can stay there. I don't think I need to disconnect that. I think the whole shaft and everything will come out. It's probably just on a gear. But other than that, we got everything out, so I think this should separate pretty easily. We'll see. Yeah, she's wiggling a little bit. It's usually just some metal sleeves, some dowels, and a couple of spots that makes it line up, and that's all you're fighting against to get it off. As I'm doing this, it's separating right in here. Let's see if you can see. You can see that gap here. So we know it's separating. Just kind of evenly separated all the way around. gasket in between here is sticking to one side of the case and then the other side, so it's going back and forth and preventing us from opening it. So I'm gonna see where it seems to, looks like it wants to stay on the motor. So I'm just gonna lightly separate that so it doesn't hang us up. I try not to ruin gaskets, even though we're probably gonna replace it. You just never know. I think it's the magnet inside the stator that's holding it on. There we go. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And then this gear. It's a starter gear. Okay, this definitely goes one way. It can go that way, or it can go that way. And that way it lines up way better. We got this gear up in here also. Shaft. Okay, that's the way it goes. Just like that. So I'll put it inside the case the way it goes so we don't lose track. Got some plastic gears here. That's for that water pump. Everything looks clean and in good shape in here. You'll see we're definitely gonna have to scrape and replace this gasket. I'm actually going to keep this gear right on here. Pull the shaft out. It's a one-way clutch for the starter. So you can free spin it that way, but it won't go this way. Actually, what I'll do, the ones that come right off, I'll put right back into this case. So I will put the shaft back in here. Right like that. And then this one. It's gonna go like that. I don't know if the shaft, yep, the shaft comes out. Let's put it right there. Just like that. All right, those are 6mm. So far, all these outside case ones were all 8mm. This in the middle here, this bolt was a 18mm. Pretty sure these are Loctited. Because they still are a little bit tight when I go to spin them. Nope, don't see any Loctite on them, but looks like they're going to hold themselves in here. Yeah, it's got like a white Loctite on them. This looks like there's supposed to be like a threaded socket that goes around this that has a bolt hole in the center that you push, you drive it in, and that pulls this off. I'll guarantee you there's a tool for that. See if there's another way around this without having to order the special tool. I really want to get this apart so I can see what damage is done, so I can know A, if the casing is good, or if we're going to need a whole nother motor, and exactly what I'm going to need to order for parts. Like usually if they have it threaded like that, that means it's probably going to be a good amount of force, and that's, you really need to grab it here, not way out here where you could flex and possibly break this. So I don't want to chance that, so probably will get this tool, order one up. Just going to see what size it would be. Like a 42 millimeter, 12 millimeter bolt. All right, let's continue on. I'm going to do a little research on this, and I'll either be back with the puller that we need or some other way to take this off. All right, so we got this puller tool, ordered it on Amazon. I'll actually put a link up here in the description in case you're interested in the same tool that we ordered. It was like 56 bucks. It's 42 millimeter, just as I measured this previously. And let's give it a shot and see if it screws right on there nice. See if we can get this taken off. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is screwed all the way in. We want to contact as much of the threads as we can. And I'll get something to hold this, and we'll go ahead and run this in. This does have a nice coat of oil on it. I want to make sure it's not super dry, because this looks like it's going to be a good amount of pressure to pull this off. We'll see. Yep. Pop the weasel. So here's that. It was a tapered shaft. I didn't realize that. Okay, there's our one-way bearing. Gonna go ahead and keep this stuff in order. Then we got this gear that I know is loose, so I'm going to pull that off and put it into the other cover so I know how it goes. It's going to go right up in here. Here you go. You can see down in the bottom right there. See all those metal pieces? Next up, we're going to pull these valve covers off, and we're going to have to disconnect all the valve train components and get these heads off. I'm going to go ahead and mark these valve covers. Alright, that's the valve train that it's got going on. Looks like we got 4 valves per cylinder, quad valves. Nice little timing gear. Everything seems to be all right up in here. No crazy wear on the rocker arms. Let's go ahead and pull this side off. Just going to make some witness marks here wherever I can. Probably end up going through a retiming process, but just in case, you never know. Here's our tensioner right here on the side. Let me pull that out of the way first. I had already removed it and just kind of put a little bit of tension on it, but we'll take it all the way out. Be careful because there's a spring on the end of this. Little plunger. Very simple mechanism. You just turn this in, and then when you let it go, it unscrews and pushes tension. But there is a spring inside here. If you take this off right here, there's a long spring in here, so keep it all together in one if you can. All right, so that took the tension off. Okay. Here's gear 1. Give her a love tap. It's going to be the dowels holding you up here. Go ahead and pull the head bolt, see if that helps us any. Put these 2 little 8mm in there as well. And off we come. See if we got any damage here. Looking pretty good. Don't see any interference. That's good. And here's our piston. Head gasket. You can see this space around here. This is all for the coolant to go through to help cool the pistons down. So that's it there. And it looks like this last piece, the top of this jug actually separates as well. I see a line and another gasket here. So there's 2. Okay, that's the cylinder liner. That's right. This whole lower cylinder section has the liner as part of it. And you can replace this whole unit as one. And I don't know if there's anything holding it in or if it's just connected with those same bolts. So let me tap it a couple times, see if it'll... All right. Pretty sure we can pull this puppy right out of here. Got our time and chain guide. Pull that out, see the way that that went in, just so we know. And this one's actually on a swivel, so we'll keep that one in there. Here we go. See how that works? So when you rebuild the motor, you can actually, these come part of the kit if you want to get the expanded kit. And you get brand new pistons and new cylinders, replaceable cylinders in this motor. Pretty slick. All right, so now we can see where that crankcase is going to split right here. And it does look like there's some bolts that need to be accessed. So this probably is going to be in the way. So it does appear that we're going to have to disassemble this right off and go the full 9 yards on this to get it apart. So all right, let's continue on this side and at least get this other cylinder off. gonna take this one out. See how that went in there. Okay, same situation. Yeah, same thing. Okay, so the crank does turn okay, but the bottom of the rods where it's connected on the crank is frozen solid. So it just probably seized up. So that's going to be the problem for sure, is the lower rod bearings. Just want to pull this piece off. See how that goes in. All right, we're switching over to this side. All right, the battery just died in between there. But all I did is take off these two nuts, this one here and this one here. This whole assembly slid off of that shaft. And then this here was in there with this like that. And then the nut on the end. Very simple, just 2 bolts to get all that apart. There was this sleeve also inside here. Turned the camera on, it said that I had 40% battery, and then in 7 seconds went from 40% battery to 0. Gotta love the GoPros. Alright, so that exposes all the 8mm to take this case off, it looks like. Trying to keep everything together with the screws right in place, so that way you don't have to worry what screws are for what. Turn it like that so all the bolts are in the right place, just like that. Everything stayed right in place. Interesting. Looks like that might be a reverse thread. Yep. Keep that in mind. This is some type of clutch pack. Okay, another one of these little chain keepers. Go ahead and pull the chain off. I think what I'm going to do at this time is we're going to put this motor on its side. So this is the top. I think that'll be the easiest way to work around it. Okay, there are a couple of bolts down in here. It looks like we got to remove this drive shaft. But there is a bolt down in here indicating that it has to be removed. So also one down in here. We do have to remove that. Looks like some type of spring activated mechanism here. So be careful taking this apart. And then I believe there's going to be a bolt down in there to take out. Maybe not. Alright. Not sure how to take that apart. For now, I'm going to work over to the drive shaft. Okay, I think that shaft's just going to slide out the other end now. Probably didn't even have to take this off. Right here where the spring was. Still don't know how that comes apart. I'm trying to figure out the last couple of bolts. You can see there's one right here, 12 millimeter, and there's one right down in here. And now they're blocked. This one's blocked by the shaft and this one's blocked by this. Alright, so I spent a little time in the manual looking at this item. Alright, I think it's time for some new GoPro batteries or something. Started this video, it's only about 10 minutes ago, and what I've accomplished here, but I'll insert the clip before this. That was the 6 seconds that it said that I had 45% battery left, so I started recording. I walked away from the camera and it shut down. Didn't even realize it. So, what I just did was, right here is where that shaft was. This is where the drive shaft came out, not the side that had the flange on it, the other side. I had to pry this seal out, and there's this locking collar inside here, which retains this bearing and this axle. Okay, and it is reverse thread, just like the bolt on the actual flange. The flange right here for your drive shaft was reverse thread. This is also reverse thread. And the shaft from the inside, I just tapped on this a little bit, and it popped right out. This bearing wasn't pressed in, it's just a snug fit. And then this that we were prying on before that I didn't want to hurt is just a relief valve. That relief valve was right here, because I had this bolt and this bolt that I had left to split the case. But you do have to remove it to get that bolt out. So I was able to do that, and then I got these last two bolts, and then I just lightly pried the two case halves together, or apart. They came right off, no problem. I had this, I took this piece off. Now all the bolts are still in place, so I know where they go. I basically had the motor on its side like this, and lightly pried and lifted the case right off. Okay, and that revealed the crankshaft inside, which was right inside here, which just slid right out. I have not touched anything yet. That's exactly how it came out. It appears that those connecting rod bolts backed off. Or I don't know if the bolts broke and stretched or the threads let go or what, but regardless, both of these are seized up solid. This whole unit will be replaced with new pistons, new rings, new rods, new crank. Even the cylinder walls come in the kit, so that'll be all new surfaces. And again, all new gaskets and seals. So that will take care of this problem. And apparently it's fairly common, because I've seen some other people mention about this. And I didn't even have to take these gears off. When it was time to slide this crank out, the only thing that was holding it up was the chain. I just kind of had to open the chain up a little around this sprocket, just so it allowed it enough room to slide out, and the crank slid right out. And our pile of parts we got right down here. Got a lot of gasket surfaces to clean up and parts to put back together. So far the only special tool I used was this puller, and again I'll have the link for it in the description if you need to buy that same one. It was like 55 bucks. There is a special tool for this locking ring right here. I just used a punch and a hammer. It does ding it up a little bit, but it's no big deal. It's insignificant. It's just a locking collar. You just want to make sure you clean it up and make sure there's no loose pieces of metal when you put it back together. We got to replace that seal there as well. I believe that comes in the kit. And yeah, the only other special tool besides that that was listed in the manual is this little, it's like a cone collar that you would set up in here to press these bearings back in. It basically just fits inside the bearing with a little bit of a collar to catch the edge of the bearing, and then another collar to stop it when it's flush with the case. And so you'd stick the new bearing halves on, start them, put this piece on, and then put it in the press and just press them in. You know, it's not going to be a ton of tension, but it is something you don't want to hammer in. I would definitely use a press so you can make sure it's nice and straight. I believe it's going to be in the beginning of this video. It's probably going to be all just one big large video, but this is the unit that we're working on here. It is a 2017 CF Moto 800 4x4. This one has been lifted a little bit. It's got some aftermarket suspension and wheels. It's got some wheel spacers. It's also got a little tuner, EFI tuner box. But that's the suspension that it's got in it, that Elka Stage 3. But yeah, that's the suspension it's got on it. The only other thing that we are going to do while we have it apart is we are going to replace this. I'll also put a link for that. This is the clutch pack that goes inside for the CVT transmission. While we got this apart, we're going to go ahead and replace that. The belt appeared to be in really good shape. I don't see any wear marks or anything crazy on that. I mean, it looks very little use, as well as the pulleys, so we're going to leave that. But so parts, all in all, we're going to have about maybe $850, $900, including this tool, and then just the time and labor to put it to take it apart and put it together. I got a lot of parts here to clean up. And again, anytime I take these halves apart, if I can, I like to keep the bolts where they are, just for reference, until I can take them out and make sure that I get the right ones, because there are different length ones. You don't want to put the wrong... All it takes is one bolt in the wrong hole that either doesn't screw in enough, that loosens up and breaks the threads, or one that's too long that clogs an oil passage or breaks part of the case. That's a mistake you do not want to make. Again, I think the failure was a simple rod, just the two bolts backed off. Again, maybe they just weren't tight enough. No, I don't know about the thought of using thread locker on those bolts. I'm gonna look into that, maybe see if that's an idea. Again, I'm certainly the new crank kit comes with this whole rotating assembly connected all together. So I am going to double check the torque on those bolts. Unless they're Loctited, I wouldn't want to... I will just look at the torque spec, and then I will set my wrench and tighten it to that spec. I won't go any more than that, and I won't try to loosen it to see where it was at. I just want to make sure that it's definitely tight enough, even though that the company I'm getting the parts from is probably aftermarket anyways. All right, guys, thanks for watching.